Welcome back to Elevate, Massage Heights podcast. This is Shane Evans, co-founder and president of this great brand, and I'm super excited to have a guest with us today, Senior Vice President of Operations and Development, Tim Hicks. Hey, Tim.
Hey, Shane.
Welcome to the podcast.
It is great to be here.
So, we just announced the podcast just this last week to our franchise partners, and with the goal in mind of just providing more communication, different types of communication that just help us get, I think, down to not just our franchisees, but team members, and bring more continuity into the system. And, speaking of continuity, your role in our organization is super critical to continuity and execution, consistent execution at the retreat level, and making sure that that we're all doing the things in the right direction that are going to help us be a more profitable organization, right? So you're a super important person. So it's really great to have you here, and I know our franchisees want to hear from you. So let's start with what's going on in the operations department this year. We can talk a little bit about operations, and we can talk about development as well.
Okay.
And so why don't we just start with operations, and tell me what's going on. What should our franchisees know this year?
Well, I think they do go hand in hand. I think operations is what drives development, and really part of operations is how do you help franchisees become more successful. And so what we're trying to focus on this year is laser focus on what's going to move the needle to profitability, and that's both top line and bottom line. And so the question really is, how do you do that? And it's really about using the tools and systems we have today, and you mentioned it earlier, on a consistent basis. Yeah. So the operations team is going to be focused on really trying to make sure that the team members inside the four walls can deliver on that guest experience every single time.
Sure. Absolutely. Brands that you know of, great brands, didn't get to be the size that they are, or have the reputations they do, or the following of consumers that they have, with inconsistencies in operations. You think of brands like Starbucks, for instance, and in almost every single situation I've ever experienced in the many, many Starbucks I've been into, you can expect the same level of customer service every time. That coffee is the same every single time. And that's, I think, really how you grow a brand, and why the franchise model really works.
Right. No question. I would use Chick-fil-A. I'm a Chick-fil-A fan.
Yeah.
No matter what, their guest service experience is always above and beyond. In fact, this week I was in a Chick-fil-A and they got my order wrong. But guess what? I didn't care, because the way they took care of me, I was not an inconvenience for them. It was their mistake. They fixed it. They couldn't have been nicer, and I can guarantee you it does not impact whether or not I'm going to go back to a Chick-fil-A.
Because of the way that they handled it.
Because the way they handled it, and the fact that I know it was not intentional, it was a mistake.
Sure.
It wasn't careless. It was just a mistake.
Sure.
And they handle it where it's not my fault.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be focused with that. Our corporate team and our franchisees, one of the first things I learned when I came to Massage Heights is, while there are many things we may not agree on, we do agree on the fact that we want the guest to come back.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really what we're going to try to focus on this year.
That's why we're all here, right? Is to get the guests to come back. That's every single one of our jobs. And as we say at the headquarters, is that it's our job as the corporate team to get our franchisees to come back, or to reinvest in the brand. And so it's no different than what the expectation is at the retreat level with guests themselves. And how do we do that? My philosophy is the kind of do unto others as you would have done unto you, or the golden rule. How would you want to be treated yourself, or how would you want the most important person in your life to be treated? I always think of my grandmother, who was, in my mind, the most perfect person I ever met, and I would never want anyone to do wrong by her. So how would I want her to be treated?
Right.
It's pretty simple. Right? You don't have to have an operations manual to know how to treat people.
Right. It is simple. And that's the thing. And often I think what happens is we get distracted from what I would consider, I don't want to use non-negotiables, but these are things we should do every time. And if you look at it from the guest perspective, somebody walking in from outside in, what is that experience like? Not from the person. Don't look at it from behind the desk. think about that person that's important to you or that person that just walked in the door, and how do you want them to feel? Because it's about a feeling.
It's about a feeling, yeah.
It's about getting that extra special little thing and highlight the fact that we are different and that guest sees that every time.
Sure. Sure. Well, speaking of that, how do you know? I know you've got some things that you've been thinking about bringing on into the system to help us better gauge guest satisfaction. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think the first thing you have to ask is when we're not delivering on the brand promise, we got to know why. You can't fix anything if you don't know what's wrong.
Sure.
And I think one of the things we're excited about is we are going to look at upping our game and providing a tool and a system through customer service measurement that's not just an NPS score, which many people are familiar with, but it's also about what are the customers really saying. And so we were working with a group now in Moment, and we expect this year we're going to have very few. One thing important, we're going to have very few projects this year.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to try to focus on less is more,
Mm-hmm.
and that the ones we deliver are the ones that are going to make the difference. And we absolutely believe that having a tool available to franchisees to measure their guest experience is the first step in understanding where we need to do and what we need to work on to get better.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. If you don't have a way to measure it, how can you know and get better, right? So
Right. It'd be great to know if somebody didn't sign up, why?
Yeah.
So send them a survey and find out why they didn't. Or if somebody quit, why did they leave us?
Yeah.
Because we don't know what we don't know and we can't fix it. And I think if we start looking at, and you're really talking about one of our key metrics, we focus a lot on the top of the funnel with getting prospects in,
Mm-hmm.
which is important, but we need to also focus on how do we keep the guests we have.
Sure.
Because our member retention is critical to get the growth that we're looking for in this business model.
Yeah, and investing in a feedback tool is really important, and knowing that. And you mentioned very briefly the team member feedback, right?
Right.
So, I mean, what do you think the correlation is between guest satisfaction and team member satisfaction?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of people would say that you take care of your employees, they take care of your guests. So I would argue that we know for a fact that particularly therapists, it's really about the culture that they work in.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to make sure we're delivering on that promise as well, so that we become that employer of choice.
Sure.
So it's not just measuring the guest experience. I think it's also measuring that employee experience and that team member experience, because if we're taking care of them, they are way more likely to be taking care of that guest.
Absolutely.
So this tool actually can measure employee and team member experience.
Yeah.
It can also measure franchisee experience. Because going back to who my customer is, I don't have a customer other than the franchisees.
Franchisee, yeah.
And we owe it to the franchisee to know. I usually ask three things. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? And what are we missing? And I think we got to constantly ask ourselves that so that we're trying to get better.
Sure.
And that's really, that's a lot about, I think this year, though, is about what do we need to do to get better, to better support our guests, our team members, and our franchisees.
Yeah. And what you measure, you manage, right? And so without having those guest satisfaction scores or team member satisfaction scores or franchisee satisfaction scores, you don't really know how to manage any of those things, or where your gaps are,
or how to get better.
or how to get better.
Somebody asked me the other day, I was in sports a lot, and somebody asked me the other day, what did I learn from sports? And what do you think? Most common, everybody says teamwork.
Sure.
But reality is, I was a pole vaulter, and reality is you are always trying to get to that next height.
Sure. Yeah.
So while you may be on a track team, one of the things that you learn is setting goals and working toward that goal.
Yeah.
And I think as a brand, wherever our service scores are today, wherever our conversion rates are, wherever our prospect counts are, we're all trying to get better. But you need to have the scorecard. And I think that's what you're going to find a lot as well, is scorecards focus for all key metrics that drive our business.
Sure. Well, okay. So let's talk about key metrics. What if you could name the top 3 to 5 metrics that our franchisees should really hone in on? If they had, let's just start with one thing. If they had one thing that they could be doing, if they are the key operator, they're not a passive investor, they're actually the operator of the retreat. And if they're not, not, and they've designated an operator, what is the one thing that person should be doing each and every day? Most critical thing.
Here's why I'll do it a little different.
Okay.
I'll put myself if I was a franchisee.
Okay.
Because I've been a franchisee, I've been in this membership model, and knowing what I know about the Massage Heights brand and model, the number one thing that I would do would be to recruit and retain my team members.
Sure.
The one thing that we've seen that the people who perform well have a lower turnover.
Mm-hmm.
They keep their teams are happy, and they're fully staffed. So without therapists, there is no business. I went into a Kentucky Fried Chicken one day. They were out of chicken.
Oh, yeah.
How do you run out of chicken at a chicken place?
Yeah.
So we're in the...
Can't run out of therapists at a massage place, right?
So if you do, then you don't have a business.
Sure.
Others are important, but a lot of prospects are great, but if I can't service them, it doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
Having, a great a conversion rate is great, but if I don't have any, therapist, it doesn't matter. So I would say the number one thing that we believe we need to do is make sure that the tools, systems, and support we have really give the franchisees everything they need to focus on recruitment and retention of team members. Having said that, we can't do that for them.
Yeah.
And it is not an occasional event. It would be in this business. It is nonstop. It's how do I make sure I'm constantly recruiting and hiring? And because that therapist is your revenue.
Yeah.
And we have to have the best therapist, and we need to be fully staffed, particularly at peak hours, but really at all times.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So that would be the number one thing. If an operator came to work every day and had one thing to focus on, it would be recruitment and retention, that culture within their four walls, and ensuring that, that they could do the best that they can to keep people from leaving and make it the best place to work, so that we've got our own team members really being advocates for us, right, as a brand.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so now you're on to the other one, which is a great team who's happy where they are will refer others.
Yeah.
And it makes that recruiting process a lot easier.
Yeah, a lot
I think
easier.
the other thing is not just recruiting them, but putting them at the right place at the right time.
Sure.
And you're going to see a metric we're going to really zero in on is what % of peak hours are we staffed? Because you can have 10 therapists, but you have them all, 9 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon, Monday through Thursday, and you don't have the staff during those peak hours. So we're going to start looking at peak hours available versus peak hours scheduled. And we think that will start helping people understand not only do I have enough therapists, but do I have enough therapists at the right time?
Sure. Yeah. I had conversations just this week, as a matter of fact, with a friend who actually owns a hotel, and he's got a spa in the hotel, and the hotel's doing really, really well, but the spa is not doing very well. And he started sharing with me kind of the schedule of therapists that he had on, and my message to him was, well, it looks like you've got a lot of people in the morning hours where you don't have people asking for massage and facial services. You've got to get those to when people want them, so we talk a lot about, or we have talked a lot about, how do you fill those non-peak hours, and certainly maybe through incentives or what have you, that would be great. But bottom line is, most guests and members want to get their services after work, the later hours, and on the weekends, right? So we've got to, that's the first thing that we have to focus on, is how do we expand the number of people that we have available to service the people when they want them, right? So if we don't have our evenings taken care of, how can we really focus on the mornings? Right?
Right. Well,
is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, because we know that the two key things customers want are convenience and customization. And convenience means I can get in when I want to get in. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to be staffed at those times. And if we were able to fill those peak hours, then I think we do have, that's the first point.
Yeah.
Then you start figuring out, okay, now how do I fill the non-peak hours?
Yeah.
And I think we have success stories out there today where this is working.
Sure.
Our franchise system is a wealth of talent and success. We just need to take those same systems and tools and make sure that people understand how to use them, how to recruit, how to pay, how to schedule. But that would be my number one, is therapist.
Yeah.
That does not make conversion and selling less important and guest experience, but I would tell you that having the staff has to be our number one priority this year.
So any other key metrics, simply put, what is number 2, 3, 4, 5?
I would put number 2 as sales. and I say that, we call it conversion.
Sure.
It's about selling.
Yeah.
And no
Memberships.
and here's what I would tell you. I think, we're in the sales business. We are in the massage business.
Sure.
But we are a membership model based on sales. And what I would tell you is I believe it's passion with a purpose. I don't want to be used car sales in our retreats.
Yeah.
I want people to sell because they believe that it's going to change somebody's life.
Sure. It's very beneficial, right? You're
It is
selling on
beneficial.
benefits.
You
Yeah.
sell on benefits. You don't sell because you get another $59 membership in the door. Because not only that, you want that guest to come in more than just once a month. So I think selling is about selling the benefits and features, but that takes practice. You got to understand it. You got to rehearse it. You got to, you can never stop learning how to get better at selling.
True.
And I think we don't do as good of a job. If I had a metric, I'd love to see our conversion rate where we're at 20% today. I think a minimum is 30%. Because that means out of every 100 people that walk in, 70 are not joining.
Sure.
Now, we have some work to do, with what we sell.
Yep.
But I do believe that if we zeroed in, because we have, again, success stories out in our retreats where there are people closing today at 40%.
Yeah. So what can we talk about that for a second? What do you think the differentiator is there where you've got low closing percentages versus a 30 or 40%? What's the deal? Do you know what they're doing differently?
Well, first and foremost is tenure of your employees. Because if you have a good team, going back to our first one, and you keep them, you're not constantly retraining on the sales process. I think the other thing that happens is you have to have your team members constantly setting goals for themselves. And if you don't have goals, there's no way to know, am I getting better? And they need to be stretch goals, but it needs to be set on a month, starts monthly, works into weekly,
Sure.
which works into daily, which works into shift.
And adjusted along the way, right? Based on performance.
Yeah, the one thing, I've been in the membership model for a long time. And when you have 30 days in a month and you set a goal that says, I want 100 new members this month, that breaks down to some number for each day.
Sure.
Let's just use for easy math, 3.
Sure.
If I miss my first 6 days and I'm down 7, I've got to make them up.
Yeah.
It's not, and if you're down your first 15 days, you're going to be hard to even catch up. So I always say that this is a monthly, daily, hourly business.
Yeah.
And I believe you have to be engaged every single hour about how are we doing. And again, not pressure sales like car, but really trying to do this because we believe in what we're offering. And I think if you have that guest experience and they have a great massage and you're able to really sell them on what they need, because selling is about rapport, it's about having a relationship, and it's about selling the customer what they need.
Yeah. And taking the time really to listen, right? And I mean, to like you said, to go over features and benefits, not just saying, hey, we have this membership, it's $59 a month or what have you, right? But to sell the features and benefits of not only regular therapeutic massage or skincare, but also the benefit of being a Massage Heights member, having that time. And I think often what happens there is that we're not well staffed enough at the front desk to where the lifestyle consultant feels comfortable in taking that time and pitching the membership program. And so then it's kind of like people are just walking out the door, right? So you have to be, especially in a brand new store when you have primarily everybody is a prospect. You've got to either stagger them or figure out how to staff well enough to be able to take that time because we can't have clerks at the front desk.
Right. And I would also say selling is not just the prospect and the new person. It's every single time somebody comes in.
Sure.
So my background in a membership model, I was in the indoor tanning business, and it was not optional to offer somebody to sell them lotion every single time.
So something similar for us would be to sell an elevation easily.
Every time.
I mean, it could be a product too, but elevation.
And because of the benefits and features, add a half hour, add an hour.
Yeah.
So
you talk about, your monthly goals leading into weekly goals and daily goals. And if we're talking about membership sales and that, but your gross sales. So if your goal is, $80,000 for the month, you have to do a work back from there, right? And adjust the sales upon that. And it's not just membership sales, but if I'm behind on my gross goal for the day or the month or the week or what have you, what else can I add in there to help me reach that? Because you're only going to have so many customers, right? So when those customers come in the door, what are my opportunities in helping them have a better experience and reaching the sales goals?
Right. So I think it's for sure not just prospect sales. We are trying to provide our guests with something that's beneficial to them.
Yeah.
And I believe the products and services we have do that, but they don't know what they don't know. And our team members need to be able to say, hey, have you tried, our hot stone?
Yeah. Yep.
What's a hot stone? I mean, I never had a hot stone.
Sure.
My first experience with hot stone was at Massage Heights. So, until you have that, but they may never change. They may never not go to have a massage with a hot stone for the rest of their life.
Right.
And now you've created an add-on that isn't going to be sold down the road. It's just going to be, oh, by the way, I want the hot stone.
Yeah. Right. Okay, so we've talked about recruitment. We've talked about membership sales conversion. One other metric.
Right. I mean, obviously conversion, prospects is another one. And I'm going to spend some time on prospects because I have an office here in Dallas. It's a shared workspace. Yesterday, there was a massage group there offering free chair massages. And this building has, give or take, 200 or 300 people in it. And
it wasn't Massage Heights, was it?
It wasn't, and it frustrates me because what I would always say is I think you have to own your 3 miles. And I know for a fact that there are locations within 3 miles. And when you start thinking about how I own my community, so that we're going to have national, regional, and marketing messages, but nothing beats the engagement of your community. And I don't care whether that is getting engaged with the schools in your trade area. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's your professionals, your offices, your businesses, but those are opportunities to do your own prospects, drive them in. Yeah. And it really is about being involved and engaged in your community. And I think that's one opportunity that in today's world, I think everybody relies so much on other ways to drive a guest.
Sure.
But we can do a lot on our own because it can get noisy out there. Mm-hmm. And I oftentimes like to see the local person who's there.
Sure.
If I go into my gym and I see somebody there that I'm like, oh, I might go get that information from them because now you're within your own community. So I think, getting engaged and owning your 3 miles is another, what does that local store marketing toolkit look like?
Sure.
That gets you back out there and you're not just waiting for the door to swing, you're helping it swing by being out there in your community.
Yeah. I think that is the number one way to grow a business is through grassroots and community engagement, B2B, getting involved in, I don't know, the sports programs and, going to teacher appreciation days and doing chair massage in the teacher's lounge. And just to your point, I think that's how you really develop trust within the community. And people want to do business with people they like. Right. And have relationships with. So I'll tell you, from when Wayne and I started Massage Heights, we didn't have a big budget. We didn't know what it was going to cost to operate a business. Dissimilar to what we provide for our franchisees today. You need to have this amount of money to get your business launched. We had no idea what it was going to take, and so it was a lot of trial and error stuff. But the way that we really grew the business, and most companies will tell you this too, is really through grassroots efforts, and getting out there in the community, to your point. So we have membership conversion, we have staffing and recruitment, and then we
local marketing. And then I can't finish talking at all today if I don't talk about the guest service.
Sure.
And while we don't have a consistent measure today, I mentioned earlier that we're working on that. But we need to make sure, because the best thing we can have also to get more guests in is to have a client base who is a raving fan.
That's the number one referral source, right? It should be. Right. That's kind of sales 101, right? You do a good job with your customers and take care of them, that they're going to refer people to you.
Right. I was on the call today with a customer service group, and I used one of, for anybody that might remember, we had Randy Ross in, who talks about the quality of the employee and the experience with the guest, tied back to his remarkable. And I'll never forget, at our convention, he said, marketing is a tax for bad service. And I say that, my marketing friends don't like that. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of companies that are built their whole company on their guest experience
Yeah.
and on service. It's not because I would be hard pressed to see too many Zappos ads,
Sure.
right?
Right. Yeah.
But people have heard of them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that many up until recently, even Starbucks ads.
Sure. Yeah.
Because they don't spend that kind of money for as big as they are. So I really do believe that we would be and we would be remiss not to talk about the guest experience. But I would tell you what the guest experience really is all about, is about delivering a consistent, quality, elevated experience. And it's those little things that will make that difference. And it's also the little things that can be that deterrent. And so I think it's really important that we recognize and be Cecilia Johnson, our CFO the other day, was telling me we need to be more thoughtful.
Yeah.
Everybody's in such a hurry,
Mm-hmm.
but what about that person in front of us and being a little more thoughtful and putting yourself in their shoes?
Sure.
And I think if we all just did that, it would drive that guest experience up even higher.
Any closing words that you have for our franchise family? Anything that you'd like to say?
I just think that the entire team is excited about 2019. We have a lot of hard work to do, but it is a committed team. We're excited about it. I'm excited about it. And I think everybody's looking forward to some great stuff this year.
All right. Thank you to our special guest today, Tim Hicks. We enjoyed the conversation. Now that you've heard from us, we would love to hear from you. We'd love your ideas on any guests that you would like to hear from. So please send us an email at communications@massageheights.com. Also, if you'll like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And as always, elevate the everyday.